I'm gonna do this now because by the end of this really boring session, half the seats will be empty. So all the people at the back and the sides who will get a seat. Hi, yeah, give us a wave. Thank you. All right. This is incredibly humbling, Vir, to be here. We made a show in a chicken shed on the other side of the world, on the outskirts of town, and to come here and to have people know who you are and not want to hit you in the head for being an Australian. It's a real joy, so thank you so much for being here. I'm going to settle down. I'm going to take the jacket off here. I think that's what we do. You ready?
Yeah. Well, you have 3 pieces, I have 1, so I'll keep it.
You're absolutely right. Keep things inside. I should say that was a very long introduction, but it really should. I say my introduction is Matt Preston eats cake for a living. That's my job.
Wears cravats for a living?
Wears cravats. You know what? Less so now, I think. I think it's become like Sunday best, the cravat. It's got a long and it is one of those strange things with television. I've been wearing cravats since I was 18 years old. I bought my first one in the Harrods sale. And I actually have it. I was actually wearing it yesterday.
You're a prosperous young man, yeah?
Yeah, well, I'm a man who likes a cheap bargain. That's why I like being here. I think that's one of the things, the ridiculousness of wearing a scarf around my neck was very much one of the things that people, when they started watching Masterchef in Australia, went, who's the idiot? Who's the walrus with the handkerchief around his neck? I think it was one of the crueler views I got early on.
But that's actually your handle as well, Matt's Cravat, right? So it's
Yes.
become part of your personality.
Yes, it's become part of the personality. The most ridiculous question is whether I wear the cravat on the beach or whether I have a neoprene, like a wetsuit material cravat. But I try not to wear the cravat when it's over 40 degrees because it's amazing how it keeps the heat in.
All right. Okay, so as the reaction from this audience will tell you, and I'm sure it's no surprise, no matter who hosts MasterChef now, you guys, and you in particular, are still always going to be the stars for this audience.
I will say at this stage, we're so happy that you've now got Poe and Andy Allen, who are 2 of our kind of our kids. We see them as our kids, and also Sophia Levin doing. I think they're doing an amazing job. The current set of judges. So if you've not watched it for a while, go back and watch because they're doing a beautiful job.
That's very gracious.
I try to be occasionally. I always think, what would my mother say? She's looking down from above. What would your mother say to this?
Yeah.
My mother was pretty judgmental. And I think, well, okay, I better be careful here. She left me some very wise advice. And one of those things was, if you can't think of anything good to say nothing at all. Which is why there are certain blank pages in my memoir where I should be writing about people, but I decided not to.
Yeah, there's a bit where it says, but that's his story to tell and he will tell it. That appears a lot, right?
I think that's one of the things it's very strange for you because like you and I, we spend our lives elevating other people's stories. That's our job. That's what I did for 11 years at Masterchef. That's what we both do as journalists. Yeah. We find other people's stories to tell them. We might occasionally put ourselves in the story, but it'll be in a tangential way. Whereas when you have to write a memoir, you have to work out what is your story and what is yours to share and what is the story you have to ignore. So a lot of the time, if it wasn't my story, I won't tell it, and because quite frankly, after the 200,000 words I wrote for the first draft, there's more than enough to put in.
I don't know if you read the book, but if you haven't, please read it because it tells you a lot about Matt. I think most people will be interested in the MasterChef stuff, which is there and is interesting and good. But there's a lot before that about growing up in England, World's End, Fulham, making the trek to Australia, moving into food journalism, about himself. Very moving passages and an epilogue about his mother. When you read it, you realize that we know him as a television personality, but he started out in print, and he's still a brilliant writer. It's a really great book.
But I think that's the thing there. We've got so many beautiful writers here, authors, historians, less so the historians about this, but for the authors, that you'd learn a lot about them from what they write. With TV takes maybe 10% of who you are and blows it up gigantic, supersized. And I think your job is to try and maintain your soul by showing the other, maybe not the other 90%, because it's probably about 10% you don't want anyone to see, but the other 70%, 80% of who you really are.
There's a bit in the book which I hadn't realized on how MasterChef Australia, or MasterChef as you call it there, did okay in Australia, and sometimes it did really well. But Australia was only about the fourth largest market eventually because you'd become such a global phenomenon.
Yeah, it was one of the strange things. I remember we got a letter end of the first season of MasterChef, and it was a bit of a letter about how this bloke sat down with his family. They had dinner, and they'd eat dinner on their knees, and they'd sit together and watch the show. And they loved the fact that all the kids would come in and watch with mum and with dad. And then at the bottom, the name was Mr. Singh from Maritza. And I went, this is bizarre. I didn't even know it was on in India. And by the end, I think India was the number one market with about 7-8 million people watching. And then South Africa was bigger. I think Australia was the sixth biggest market in the end. So yeah. We'd broken records in Australia, but really at the end, it was the fact that this became this amazing global brand, which is incredibly, like I said, you make a TV show in a chicken shed on the outskirts of town, you do not expect people to ever see what you're doing.
But if I remember, the original British MasterChef was a greengrocer, about him probably less said the better now, and an Australian chef, and it was quite a sort of low budget kind of thing. And then you guys come along, and suddenly it becomes an international franchise with editions all over. Yeah. US MasterChef is Gordon Ramsay. There are other MasterChefs in many, many countries. So you guys launched the franchise, really.
I think that was the brilliant thing, and that Australian thing, they were looking for something to replace Big Brother, which they cancelled. And the idea of MasterChef, or the Australian version of MasterChef, was based on the English MasterChef, but no one wanted to buy that format. It was pitched to every network. The Network 10 that eventually took it was pitched to 3 times. Finally, they went, okay, we'll give the show this show. They based it on a mix of a little bit of The Apprentice, a little bit of Survivor, voting. So it became a kind of, rather than a straight stand and stir competition show, it became a slightly bigger, more like an MTV or a kind of a big show where contestants live together. And it was a brilliant idea by a guy called Paul Franklin. And that changed it. MasterChef had never been that successful subsequent to that, the Australian version taking off. At the end, I think there were 60 versions around the world of MasterChef. There was MasterChef Korea, there was MasterChef Afghanistan, there was MasterChef Bangladesh, there was MasterChef Pakistan. It was an amazing thing. What's weird is when you see your archetype in with a cravat and a 3-piece suit in the Malaysian version, or
really,
or the guy in the check suit in the French version, because TV people are not very. Are there any here?
Say what you like.
TV people aren't very creative, and they're scared, right? They're scared of doing the wrong thing, so they tend to stay really safe. So we have it was a German TV show called Man Oh Man, and it was presented by a German presenter who had grey hair and a grey moustache. And when they cast the show in Australia, they looked for not how good the presenter was, whether he had grey hair and a white moustache. So, I mean, the most ridiculous way of approaching it rather than doing talent, but that probably, Vir, that kind of leans into our success. When MasterChef started, we were told that it was the most ridiculous casting that had ever been made. The contestants were all ugly. Some of them were old. They had 3 fat judges. It was like, who would want to watch this show? And we always say one of the joys about MasterChef is because it didn't conform to any of those stereotypes. It kind of felt fresh and new, and it also allowed us. I think everyone at the network thought it would fail. We'd be like when you finish a long relationship, like viewers had with Big Brother, you then go into the rebound relationship that lasts a very short period of time. I think everyone thought MasterChef would be the rebound relationship, but luckily people fell in love with it, and we ended up doing 11 amazing seasons.
When you started out, it wasn't like X Factor or wherever, where you had Mr. Nasty, Miss Sweet or whatever. You guys just went in there and did your own thing, isn't that right?
If you get onto YouTube, you can find the original promo for MasterChef. And it starts with very dramatic classical music. And it's basically waiters in leotards holding cloches pirouetting across the stage. And they all pirouette towards this central stage. And there sitting on the central stage are the 3 judges, myself, George, and Gary. And we look really horrible. We look like Shakespearean villains. We look like we're going to disembowel the contestant there. So you can see that. That I think is what they thought it would be. That's the classic image of reality TV, is you have to have bad people. You have to have a villain. You have to have. That's where you get drama from. You get drama from being mean to people. You get tears from being mean to people. In TV world, tears they're like crack cocaine to TV people. They love it. And we took the other attitude. None of us wanted to be the mean judge. So I think the moment when everything changes in that first season of MasterChef is Julie Goodwin cooked an amazing bit of lamb, and we all gave her a hug. And all the TV people went, you can't do that. You don't hug contestants. It looks like your favoritism. But they allowed it to play, and it kind of set the tone for the series, and that ran through and still runs today, this kind of idea that it's not about winning. It's about taking part. It's a celebration of food. It doesn't matter if it's bad, you can make it better. How do you make it better? All those really core MasterChef messages, I think, have resonated with people. And I love, and it was about this idea that cooking is an act of love. That when your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, your father, your uncle cooks for you, that time they take in feeding you is an act of love. And so therefore, you should never be, when someone's shown that love to you, you should never be mean back. You can talk to them about how they can make things better. You can normally find the answer of what they do to make things better just by asking them. So the secret is to try and make it inclusive. I did a TV show after MasterChef, and the producer, very successful producer, came up and said, I can't believe what I've just done. I've made an episode of reality TV where I was crying because it was so moving and because it was so beautiful, and you hadn't been horrible to anyone. And it was like, well, that's what it can be. You know, food isn't I had an experience of, sorry, I'll digress.
No, go on.
As I will do endlessly. I had an experience today where I'm sitting back at house and someone has made me a Malabari prawn curry. So she's got up this morning, she's gone to the garden, she's made Malabar prawn curry, and I say, why this dish? It's like a mini MasterChef moment. And she talks about being on a lake with her father and her mother and her family, and having Malabar, she's not from a Malabari background, and having this meal. And she's talking so beautifully about it. Myself, my friend, we're all sitting there, we've got tears in our eyes, she's got tears in her eyes. It's this amazing idea that food can move you at great times, because it is so central to who we are as human beings. So I wonder sometimes whether we underestimate the power of food. And that's not just good food. That's not the fancy restaurant food. That's the food that's the food of your soul.
How do you actually distinguish between, which was your job in a way, distinguishing between food that's made with love and passion and food that's really not very good? Because often love and passion are not enough.
Oh, no, love and passion. This is one of the worst cliches ever invented by food reality TV, is this idea, I made it with love. My grandmother loved me very, very much, but she was a terrible cook. When I was little, I learned to cook at her house because it was an act of self-defense. So it is, but it doesn't matter, because I still, when I wrote my first cookbook, there were more recipes from my grandmother who cooked really bad food than there were from my grandmother who cooked beautiful food. And I've still struggled, and I can only think that it's a reflection of the times that I spent with her and that link. And I think, you know, we always talk about the five, the six tastes, but memory, I think, is one of those. Memory is almost like another sense that it's so evocative that you taste something. It's a moment in everyone's seen Ratatouille, you know, the animated film with the rat, and that moment when then the critic has the ratatouille and he flashes back to being in short pants, and it's that moment. And I think, you know, have you had an experience like that? Have you had a moment where you tasted something and it's taken you back to a point in your time or a point in your life? Put your hands up if you've had that experience. You see, it's kind of universal. It's crazy, but we kind of don't. We don't really talk about home cooking in that way of how universal and how important it is. And I think that almost shows how universal and how important it is that we value food, and we should value food.
Well, there's a curious dichotomy in a sense in what you do, because when you were on MasterChef, I think we counted them yesterday, every single one of the world's great chefs came on to MasterChef. So you were dealing with very high quality professionals, with contestants who were often better than the professionals who went on to be professionals. And yet your parallel, extremely successful career is as a writer of cookbooks for home cooks.
Well, you know the secret of this, Vir, that no matter how much chefs love to talk about themselves, their books never sell as well as cookbooks. There's a reason why they're called cookbooks. They're written by cooks. They're not written by chefs. The earliest recipes ever written down are written on cruciform tablets. They're held at a university, I think Yale. They're 4 recipes. Effectively, the earliest ones were 3 recipes, 4,000 years ago. And there are these great recipes, one for a lamb stew with beetroot, one for a lamb soup. Also in that very close collection of cruciform carved tablets is a jester's tablet taking the mickey out of pretentious ways with food. And this is carved 4,000 years ago, and it says, take a goose egg, rest it on sand, serve it with a sauce of Epicurean, which must be an area in Greece, an Epicurean seaweed. And it's like he's taking the mickey. So obviously at the point where we're writing down our first recipes, people are taking the mickey out of people who want to make food something more than something kind of highfalutin and fancy. So I've discovered that this morning at 5:30, I thought I'd share it.
And yet, despite these prehistoric criticisms, the ponciness continues, doesn't it?
Oh, there's always money in putting those tiny weeny herbs on things.
Yeah.
You know, that's an extra 300 rupee.
And a little foam, we still do that in India.
You still do a foam.
Yeah.
But also that's not, you know, we were talking about what are the things you love in food? What are the dishes? You know, a great kachori, a lila mas. You know, these are the things that you try, and they have a cultural role, but they just make you feel happy. They make you feel good. And I think it's finding those things and acknowledging and championing those things. And that, as our job as food writers, is to hopefully introduce you to those experiences. I was lucky enough with Masterchef to have 11 years of introducing those experiences to contestants via people like Yotta Motalengi and Nigella Lawson and these great, very influential cookbook writers.
When you started writing about food, you did restaurant reviews as well, which is not a phase in your life you're particularly keen to talk about or seems to have left a deep impression on you.
No, look, it was great. I did it for 10 years. I stopped when I started MasterChef. I'm still called a restaurant critic after 16 years.
Over your objections, you don't really like
I know, but only because I don't, I mean, I debate whether restaurant criticism exists anymore because I think social media has democratized. You know, now your restaurant critics are writing 140 characters, or they're posting on Instagram, and you're following. If you're obsessed with Malabar cuisine, you're following those great Malabar cooks and talking about great Malabar restaurants. So you find your joy point from those people. So I'm not sure how relevant restaurant criticism is. Certainly doesn't have the same power in Australia. But also, I stopped doing it when half the people in the audience were still at school, or possibly even not born.
Yeah.
So it's a part of me, just like Masterchef's a part of me, but also there's other stuff going on as well.
But when you became a judge in MasterChef, from what I remember, and you've referred to it, one of the criticisms was that you weren't a chef, and yet you were judging aspiring chefs. Did that worry you?
No, because if you list the world's great chefs, half of them have never gone to culinary school. You know, they started as dishwashers, they started as lawyers. Mas Matura at Austria Francescana was a lawyer. Neil Perry was a hairdresser. Stephanie Alexander, probably the writer of the greatest cookbook in Australia, was a teacher and a librarian. So I don't think I think the problem often with chefs is they don't really understand cooking at home. They're amazing at juggling numbers and doing volume, but it's hard for them to translate what they do into the restaurant into home cooking. Someone once asked me about when I wrote my first cookbook, they said, why are you writing a cookbook? You're not a chef. And I said, well, I'm writing a cookbook because I'm a writer and I'm a cook. So actually, if you want to trust someone, and I think if you look at who you trust, certainly in the UK and in Australia, invariably books by cooks sell far, far more copies than books written by chefs. Rick Stein's probably one of the examples. Nigella wrote for The Spectator. Yotam was a journalist in the Tel Aviv. So, you know, I think I think there's a danger that we see food as being the sole preserver of the chef. And yet, if I look across this audience, I'm sure there are about 500, 600 great home meals that we could all go and celebrate together. And I'm more interested in celebrating those and finding those than someone putting those micro herbs or a little of foam.
Do you like the idea of a celebrity chef, or do you think it's past its sell-by date?
Chefs hate the idea of celebrity chefs.
That's what they all say till they pose for pictures and get endorsement.
Yeah, I know, and you know, look, I think it's become part of what chefs do. They have to market themselves through going to festivals and doing TV shows and stuff like that and being on stuff like MasterChef. I don't know. I think we get a bit tied up on what other people think of you. One of the things I learned with MasterChef is do not worry what anyone else thinks. Worry what the woman you love thinks, your partner thinks, your children think, your friends think. Those are the people that you need to be true to. The other people, it doesn't matter what they think. They're going to think ridiculous things, you know. Quite frankly, I once talked to a footballer who was banned for doing illicit drugs, right? Steroid use. And he said, I know that when I walk in there, people will hate me. Most will hate me for the fact that I took steroids, but some will hate me because they remind me of their French teacher back at school who they didn't like. So there are all these other examples of why people don't resonate with you and you don't resonate with them. So you can't worry about that.
There's a bit in your book where you talk about the style of the program, and you referred to it today on how reality TV had bad guys and stuff like that. And you guys decided you were going to be the anti-Gordon Ramsays. You weren't going to shout at anyone. You were actually going to be nice to people. And that was the first, wasn't it?
I think so. I think there were lots of examples of cooks who were nice and supportive, but yeah, it was probably a first reality TV. But it happened at a strange time in the world, and that's what's fascinating about being here and listening to all these amazing thinkers about moments in time, and this moment in time. That moment in time, we had in the world a kind of welling up of being nice to people. We had Barack Obama getting elected in America. It was a softer time. It had been a harder time, and the pendulum had swung back towards a softer time. So maybe if we'd done that a year earlier, 3 years earlier, it might not have resonated. But we were kind of like a surfer, we were paddling at the right time to catch the wave. When
did you realize that India had become so keen on MasterChef, and you were such big stars in India?
Well, I think it was probably that letter in Amritsar was the first thing. It's very hard to comprehend. I mean, I come here a lot. I've been here, I think, 6-7 times in the last 2 years. And it still blows me away that people go, "Hi, Uncle." And I go, "Oh, wow, how cute's that?"
Really?
I love that when they, Uncle is the coolest thing. When you get old, right? When you get old, you're just the old bloke, right? In Australia, oh, yeah, he's all right. He's a bit old, though. Here, you're uncle, and that's very good. So that moment, and what I love about it is that invariably here in India, it's I can place them, kids under 20, 25, and I realize that what I've become here is they say things like, "Oh, you were so much part of my childhood," and I realize that I am like Barney the dinosaur or Shrek the ogre, that I've just arrived, and I have that role. But on the upside, they care about food. They want to go and learn from their grandmother, their aunt, their uncle what to cook. They want to keep that culinary history alive. They want to, and that if you'd said that originally when we started, Gary and I sat there and said, "What would be the dream?" I'm assuming the show continues. What influence would you like to have? And we came up with all we wanted to do was stop people buying Parmesan cheese in those little shaker cardboard tubes that smells a bit like a festival toilet. We just wanted to buy real Parmesan and grate. That's all we wanted to do. But the idea to come here and to go to people who started up chocolate shops or are working in restaurants or are finding or chasing their dream in food is an unbelievable thing to do, and they're really, really happy. And I think that's been, for us, the most amazing privilege. And here in India, it's been embraced in a way that I don't think it's been embraced anywhere else in the world on the same level.
There's a bit in your book when you talk about one of your early visits to India, and in very dodgy taste, you dress up as a Maharaja, and you appear at a gathering, and you are mobbed.
Wait. I'm gonna. This is a really good time. You know those things. You know things you do in your past. You wonder, was I being a bit uptight?
Perhaps,
okay.
Yeah.
So imagine this: we're in Bangalore, and we're going to an orphanage, and they want to dress us up. Not in a kurta, that would be okay, but in Maharaja outfits. We'll turn up as Maharajas. And I've gone, I'm not so sure if the overfed Australians turning up dressed as Maharajas to the orphanage is a good thing to do. And maybe if we were wearing, more street clothes, that would be better. Was I being oversensitive? Hands up, I was being oversensitive? Hands up if it was a good thing to be grumpy about. Okay, so yeah, no, good.
Yeah.
I'm glad. And George and Gary would just put you being ridiculous, and the kids will love it. And I think the attitude was that we'll just be like the the Sultan in Aladdin. You know, the Sultan. Gary would be there like Jafar, and I'd be like the Sultan with the white beard and the moustache.
Basically, every racial stereotype possible.
Everyone, yeah, exactly. So, I think that's good that we're sensitive about those things. I think it's important we're sensitive about those things. I mean, obviously, Vir, as you know, what didn't make the book was the fact that I am actually, as I've discovered, I'm actually an 16th Indian. I'm actually a 16th Indian. My grandmother's father was born in a place called Sudna in West Bengal. So this is what I was trying to work out why I loved India so much, and now I've suddenly realised I've got a bit of heritage. If Virat Kohli rings me up, I could maybe come in and help up the top order for the Indian cricket team.
The point I was making about the story was not so much about you dressing up as a Maharaja, but about the response. You said there were 3,000 people shouting and screaming, and you guys were almost terrified because you'd never imagined something like this could happen.
I think I'm terrified because when you get a large amount of people in an uncontrolled space, when you start looking at the front row and there are kids being crushed through metal barriers and stuff like that, that's really scary because you don't want to be involved in that environment. I don't think we never felt scared of it, never felt controlled of it. But people want to get a picture and they want to have a chat, and that's really lovely and it's great. And we now will do that, but in a much more structured way, like the signing here, which is great. I'm happy to sit for 3-4 hours and take photographs. I did the signing in Portugal. The queue was so long. It went out of the bookshop. It went round that bit of the block, 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 and came back to the front door. It was a 4-hour signing, and it was amazing. And people were willing to wait. And when people are willing to wait, you want to go, thank you very much indeed. So I'll be there signing books. If you want to have a signed book, that's great. We'll have a photograph, and I hope you see as many of you as possible.
I think anyone watching you today will ask themselves this question. You've had 11 years on the world's biggest food program. You attract crowds wherever you go. There are queues for your signings, yet you actually seem like a nice bloke. It hasn't really got to you. You're still Don't believe it? All right.
Don't believe it. You're Willie Dalrymple.
Great anchor, great actor, but still.
No, look, okay, can I say, and I think Willie would feel the same way. Willie and I knew each other when we were 20, right, back in London. So we're
in a basement flat.
In dodgy basement flats. When something like this happens when you're old, right, at that point when you should be looking at retirement homes and doing that, it's the most amazing privilege. And the fact that someone wants to talk to you about something you love so passionately, such as the food they like to cook or the food their mother cooked, to have that conversation is incredibly empowering. To see that, I mean, this is going to sound terribly Oprah Winfrey, but if you can spend 30 seconds of your life having a photograph with someone and they go away happy, why wouldn't you do it? It's the most amazing thing. And I think the other thing is that that's often underestimated. How sour would you be if you didn't get an amazing... I mean, I get more out of that interaction than anyone else does. One, I get to find out what they cook. But two, I get to see people happy. It's the most amazing thing to do. So I think I had a brush with fame when I was a little bit younger, and it went straight to my head, and I just kind of took myself too seriously. So I think knowing how bad that was and having my friends tell me I was being an idiot was a really good thing to happen, because there was a tiny little smidgen of celebrity. So when Masterchef came along, it was like, okay, great, thank you. I'll take this, I'll enjoy it, and I'll embrace it in every way that I can. And coming here to the Jaipur Literary Festival, which is an incredible honour for an Australian food writer to come. Let's face it, I'm not a Nobel laureate. I'm not a Pulitzer Prize winner. I've never won a Booker. If that's the deep end of the swimming pool, I'm paddling down the shallow end. And thank you so much for paddling with me. Also, how good is it to come to Jaipur and go to the Lassi-Walla and, eat kachori? I mean, I'm a happy man. Food and travel, and that's my happy place.
Okay. Let's talk a bit about India. When you came here for the first time, and you've been here, what, every 2 months since then, pretty much. What was your first impression, and how has your view of India changed, if it has at all?
Oh, wow. Okay. Let's be frank. I came as a tourist in 1989. That was great. But my first real experience of coming properly to India was to come and do a story for Vogue. And I learned one thing. I learned if you wanted something done in India, never talk to the man, talk to the woman. First thing. It was the first thing I learned. I think that's changed. I think it's changed with the under 25s. And I had a horrible experience coming here and doing an event, and none of us enjoyed it. We didn't want to come back again. It was not great.
Which city?
I'm not going to say.
All right. Okay.
And it wasn't.
Tell us what went wrong.
The people were amazing, but it was just badly organised. Like, this is unbelievable. I used to run the Melbourne Food and Wine Festival. This is unbelievably organised. It's amazing what they pull off here. You should be so proud of what you have in Jaipur. Yeah. It is serious. I've done events around the world. This is truly unique. But then when I started working with a group of guys called Konosh, and Gary and George and I have come out. We have a young team. We bring these young chefs together to work with us. They're all 22, 23 apprentices. They come with us around the country cooking dinners. They become our right arm. We bring our chefs with us. They work together, and it's the difference. The difference of working in a hotel kitchen with these young cooks compared to the old, crusty cooks of maybe 10 years ago is beyond recognition. The food you can do, how they learn. And then in November, I went to Goa, went to Cavatina by Avanish Martins, which if you haven't been, you have to go to. And I walked in, and one of those young cooks from our first visit was working in the kitchen there. And you have that same swell of pride you have when you go to somewhere like Dan Barber's Blue Hills or Mugaritz, and in the kitchen is one of your charges now working in a great hotel, a great restaurant in the world. The idea that they come to us a little ember, and all we've done is just blown on the ember, and then they've gone on and learned and studied and experienced, and now they are working in one of the best restaurants in the world, or they're doing their own cookbooks or doing their own TV series. That's incredibly satisfying, and so that I'm very excited by the future for India, given this younger generation of men and women that's coming through, this kind of sub 26, 27-year-old. And there's a lot of them. Was it half Indian, half of the 1.6 billion Indians are under 27, is that right? It's about right. Yeah. So there's a lot of them. It's a very bright future. I'm kind of excited about that.
And you've always had Indian food in MasterChef, right? You had many contestants.
Well, but that was the whole thing. We had Jimmy, we had so many contestants. We had contestants all around the world. And at a time when the world was kind of becoming more insular and more kind of, and food is one of the ways we use to other people. It was amazing to sit there and have dishes from Mangalore or dishes from Pune, dishes from Delhi on Australian television. Have these people represented, and people from Malaysia, and people from Thailand, and people from Vietnam, and that's what Australia is. Australia is this amazing melting pot of different cultures that remain separate, which is wonderful because we now have some unbelievably good Indian restaurants in Australia. But also, we get to travel in our high street. It's the most wonderful thing. On the other side, I look at those restaurants and you see reasons why people have travelled, and that's normally economic or war. And so there's a sad story there. But the upside is, oh my gosh, look at what they're making of their life now and how wonderful that is.
Have you always liked Indian food?
I grew up in London. Where else? Why wouldn't I love Indian food? It is different though. They do like their curries to taste of tomato sauce back in the UK. Yep. Tomato soup. Is it Indian food? It's English Indian food. But I grew up having a curry, playing rugby and having a curry. That was part of my teenage years. So yeah. But coming here is so different. And again, you use a word that people when I come here, they always ask me that question: what's your favourite Indian dish? And my response to them is, what's your favourite European dish? Because this isn't a country, this is a continent. All the variations in cuisine across this country are phenomenal. How can you compare a risotto to roast beef to a French souffle? It's the same here with India. How can you compare the food of Kashmir with the food of Kerala? You can't do it. They're unique. What's the great truth here is that every 50 kilometres, the masala mix will change. I mean, that's what makes this country so amazing to travel, because the food in Nagaland or Ladakh is so different to the food you'll get in Tamil Nadu.
Okay. I think we've softened you up nicely. You don't have to say one favorite dish, 5 favorite Indian dishes.
Okay, well, this is a terrible thing, but I set Vir up when we were talking about the session we're doing tomorrow, and I said, Vir, what's your favourite cuisine? And he said Kerala.
Yeah.
Kerala. And I've got to say, and I'll give you the answer, because I think I need to be honest here. My favourite cuisine is invariably the last one I've had, and the last food I had here was in Kerala. I come from Melbourne in Australia. We love sour. So anything from that coast which uses cork vinegar, that uses amchur, that uses dahi, anything that uses those things, you're going to win my heart. But then how can you not enjoy a dal makhni? Come on, how can you not enjoy having, a lalmas? I mean, there's so many delicious things and the stories that go with it. So they're like children. I love them all. Some I like more than others at different times.
All right. You talk in your book about many of the guests you had on Masterchef Australia, and you say that one of the surprises was Gordon Ramsay because he was lovely.
It's an interesting. I think that you've done a bit of journalism there. We're using the word lovely. He was surprising. We were very concerned at because we thought there are kids, right? There's 24 contestants. We feel very protective about them, and the idea of bringing in someone who's going to be mean to them. And we've had a couple of chefs that have done that. Don't go down well. Don't like it. Don't want it. Unacceptable behaviour. Not coming back ever onto the show again. Gordon was actually very funny and actually quite soft. But the weird thing with Gordon was he was just obsessed with how's that working, who does that job. Because obviously Masterchef USA, he's involved with as a producer as well as a host. So he was just milking everything. But also he'd done his research. He knew that Gary liked pudding. That George sweated, so he was able to play with those kind of idioms as well. So yeah, but he's not Nigella, Yotam, they would be my favourite of those two because they're home cooks, and also because Nigella is like my elder sister who just is mean to me, and I annoy her, and we have arguments about white chocolate, and it's fantastic. And Yotam is just a great human.
Okay, nicely diverted, but coming back to Gordon. Did he actually use the F word on the set?
We don't swear.
Australians never swear.
Australians never swear.
As is well known.
Who thinks an Australian swear? What a ridiculous idea that is.
No, but seriously, I mean, many people say about him that when the cameras are turned on, he becomes a persona.
You're right. I think he does, and I think what was interesting is that there's a difference, right? Okay, on most reality TV cooking shows, the food is terrible.
Yeah.
Like terrible. And it's done for drama, and it's confected, and they're given cooking classes. MasterChef was very, very honest and very real. If it was an hour-long cook, you cook for an hour. And they were good cooks, and what you saw was what you got. And I think Gordon came in, and there's that respect when people cook for you good food, that you're respectful. And he was very much like that. He was actually very respectful. He's got an amazing palate. He genuinely cares. You've only got to see... If you want to know what a chef is really like, look how long his staff stay with him. So someone like Matt Abe, who runs Royal Military Road, Gordon's flagship restaurant, is an Australian, has been there for a long time. If chefs move quickly, it's because they don't like the head chef, and the head chef's a bully.
That's true. And many of Gordon's chefs have gone on to run successful empires originally encouraged by him. Who was the worst of all the guest chefs you had? You can tell us roughly if you don't want to name him, but we'll guess.
I think you can guess. Like my mother said.
Yeah.
Like my mother said, if you got nothing good to say,
yeah.
She used to say nothing. I say, talk about cake.
Okay.
In other words, you just talk about how much.
Okay.
How
much let's talk about Nigella because you're more comfortable doing that clearly.
No, because why would I give oxygen to someone I don't like?
Agreed.
Simple. And that's the rule. If you don't like someone, don't bitch about them. Don't give them oxygen. Just ignore them, cut them out of your life. That's the way to deal with it, yeah? There's no point. Don't let them eat you up. Don't let them take away your spark, your joy.
Absolutely. Nigella, you were saying that...
Spark and joy.
You're obviously quite, in the book, I mean, she appears again and again. You're obviously quite,
Well, because actually,
you're quite keen on her in the nicest sort of way.
like an older sister. Thank you very much indeed.
Yeah. Older sister.
No.
Wow, yeah. All right.
She is. I think she's a month older, so I'm allowed to get away with it.
All right. Okay.
She comes from a very similar background to me. We grew up in the same part of town. At the time I was finishing the book, I did a tour around Australia with her, and she's just a great person.
Her father was a millionaire and a politician. You know, the same background.
How do you know?
All right, okay.
Because
I've read your book, I know
you're saying I look like a Popo person? No, you're right. He was a politician and millionaire. I didn't come from that background. It's clear to say. But if you grow up in West London, you're a West Londoner. If you grow up in Jaipur, you're from Jaipur. That's where you're from. You've got pride in where you're part of town. In London, it's much more regional. You're not a Londoner. You're a West Londoner. So I think that's a. And so you've gone to the same clubs, you've eaten the same food. She went to the same school that my sister's kids go to now. So there's, that's the connection, I think.
Sure. But you said about her that she banned you from using the word deliciousness because you said it was meaningless. And that you apparently had a room where you would discuss what to do, and she took you can tell the story.
It's the moment we knew I loved her in terms of she fitted in so well, and she was the fourth judge that we never knew we needed. On television, every decision is discussed for hours. What colour should the sofa in the back of the room be? Purple or green? Hours these discussions go on. And so Nigella came in, and we had a room where we'd go and deliberate what dish would win or lose. And she got one of the runners to run up a sign that said, "The room of pointless meetings." And up it went on the wall and went, "Great, you understand it." But again, she was free and frank with her opinions, which is what you want. You want honesty when you're doing that kind of stuff, and she was great. So, and she hates white chocolate. She thought I was an idiot for suggesting you could have donuts with a burger in it for breakfast. And she did go, "Don't use the word delicious. What does that tell anyone?" We use a lot of short form on television because time is short. Yummy, that's yummy. It's like, well, explain, why is it yummy? What makes it special? Why? If something is delicious, if I don't describe it either on television or in print, and your mouth is watering and my mouth is watering when I've finished, I have not done my job as a writer or a presenter. You need to feel it. You need to, feel that juice going in here on either sides.
Okay, last question because we're out of our time, but this audience, I think, will want to know, why did you stop doing MasterChef?
11 years, still loved it. Time to do different things. And both Gary and I didn't want to get to a point where we woke up one morning and we became old and bitter for doing the show. And we had a meeting with the producers when we were discussing whether they were talking about a new contract, and they said, "We can see you doing this for another 20 years. And Gary and I looked at each other and went, "No." And the reason is because, are there any teachers in the audience? If you're a teacher, put your hand up.
Well, there's some there.
Yeah. Teachers will tell you that what happens after a while is you get the same kids coming back endlessly. The same kids are reappearing, and that's great, but it's kind of like, it's repetitive, and you don't want to do repetitive stuff. And there was other stuff to do. And quite frankly, I couldn't come to the Jaipur Literary Festival because I was making MasterChef. So it's amazing to be able to do other stuff and explore other areas. I love the 11 years. I'm really happy with the experience we have. Having done a lot of other TV, it was unique. And I think the reason why people love it is because it was unique, because it was honest and transparent in a way that most food TV isn't.
In your book, you dance around this particular area. If you will remember, hang on, let me finish. And you say that it wasn't the money; it was just the kind of restrictions they wanted in the contract. Was having to do this forever one of them? Then,
well, I mean, the truth is they agreed to pay us the money. Yeah. They weren't paying us the same money, so we wanted pay parity, because I thought that was important. I've come from a background when I worked at a workers' cooperative and got paid the same. I think that's a good thing to do.
We actually paid less.
That would be indiscreet.
Yeah. Well, that's not a denial, as we would say in journalism.
It's not a denial, but neither is an acceptance. You can do whatever you like until you hear from my lawyers. the money is really important because it allows you to do all these amazing things, and it's great. But you get to the point when it becomes less important than and again, the clock is ticking. I'm 63. The clock is ticking. There are places I haven't been to in India. There are places I want to go to. There are things I want to see and do. And in the last 12 months, I've done stuff that I've had my hand up an elephant's bottom as a vet assistant. I've released pangolins back into the wild. I've been to see the oldest living artwork in the world, which isn't European, and art is so dominated by this Eurocentric view. It's amazing to be able to say, no, art starts in Indonesia, and it starts from those people who travel from Africa all the way through. The earliest art is in Sulawesi, and it's made, and this is from Australians, is so important, and it was painted by the same people who would then continue on down into Australia and be what are now our First Nations people. So that's really important when you're living on the land, on the unceded land of First Nations people. It's amazing to be able to tell those stories and help those stories be told.
So are we going to get to see you on television again soon?
You'll see me with my hand up an elephant's bum.
Yeah, I know the second time you've mentioned this. Why?
Because a friend of mine said, come to Africa and go to this place. It's a place called Gorongosa in the middle of Mozambique. And Gorongosa was, in its day, the home of more lions than anywhere else in the world. And then their civil war came, and from the most lions of anywhere else in the world, they went down to having this huge national park. They had 5 lions. They had 200,000 large game before the Civil War. At the end of the Civil War, they had 10,000. So it's a terrible story of environmental destruction. And the brilliant thing about Gorongosa is they brought it back. And they've now got loads of prides of lions. They've got wild dogs. They've got 120,000 large mammals. So this idea that humans will mess up the environment, but Gorongosa gives us the answer that potentially we can pick it up, we can save it, we can reverse what our forefathers have damaged.
Does not explain the hand up the elephant bum, but never mind, we're at the end of our time.
It's TV. It's TV.
All right,
In order to tell one story, you have to put your hand up the elephant's bum.
Okay, all right. Listen, we're at the end of our time. A couple of things. One, I think on behalf of the whole audience, Matt Preston, thank you for the happiness and the joy you've given us and for everything you've done for food.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you so much for
And also,
turning up.
I think from the whole audience, I don't know when we'll next see you on television, but whatever you do, please go out and live the full life you've lived so far, because you're an amazing man.
Thank you very much indeed. You're very charming. I should say that I will be in Jaipur in March, and I will be there twice. So you're probably going to see me. You're probably going to see me in the streets of Jaipur before you'll see them on TV, which is kind of suitable. I'm very happy about that. Thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate seeing you all.
Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, Matt Preston and Vir Sanghvi.